As I scrolled through the endless stream of faces on Tinder, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Sure, there were plenty of attractive people on the app, but something about the whole experience just felt off. Maybe it was the way people presented themselves, like they were trying too hard to appear perfect. Or maybe it was the constant pressure to make a snap judgment based on nothing more than a few carefully curated photos. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was participating in something that was, at its core, a little bit creepy. But I continued swiping, hoping to find someone who might break the monotony of it all. And then, I came across a profile that immediately caught my attention. The photos were all of a young woman with long, curly hair and bright blue eyes. She looked sweet and innocent, the kind of person who might be fun to talk to. I swiped right, and soon enough we were matched. We exchanged a few messages, and I was pleasantly surprised by how engaging she was. We talked about our shared interests, and she seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. But then, things started to take a turn. She began sending me increasingly strange messages, asking invasive questions about my personal life and making odd comments about her own experiences. At first, I brushed it off as an attempt at being playful or flirty, but as the messages continued, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was seriously wrong. It wasn't until she started sending me pictures of herself engaging in disturbing, violent acts that I realized just how deep the horror of Tinder could go. I quickly unmatched with her and reported the profile, but the damage had already been done. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered long after I'd closed the app. In the end, I learned that there are some things that just can't be screened for on an app like Tinder. No matter how carefully you curate your profile, there's always the risk that the person on the other end isn't who they seem to be. And for me, that was a sobering reminder of the darker side of modern dating. As the days passed, I found myself becoming increasingly paranoid. Every time my phone buzzed with a notification, my heart would skip a beat. I couldn't shake the feeling that the girl from Tinder was still watching me, still trying to get in touch. I tried to rationalize my fear, telling myself that it was just my imagination running wild. But then, one night, I received a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was a simple message, just 3 words, "I found you." My hands started shaking as I stared at the screen. I knew it was irrational, but I couldn't help feeling like it was somehow connected to the girl from Tinder. I tried to block the number, but the messages kept coming. They were never explicit threats, just vague and unsettling messages that made me feel like I was being watched. I started seeing shadows in the corners of my vision, and every creaking floorboard seemed to be a sign that someone was sneaking up on me. I tried to tell myself that it was all just in my head, but then things started to escalate. I received packages in the mail, filled with strange and unsettling objects. One was a lock of hair that I recognized as belonging to the girl from Tinder. Another was a series of photos, taken from outside my apartment building. I knew I had to go to the police, but I was afraid they wouldn't take me seriously. After all, what proof did I have that any of this was connected to the girl from Tinder? But I couldn't ignore the fear that was growing inside of me, like a tumor that refused to stop spreading. And then, one night, I heard a knock at my door. It was a soft, hesitant knock, but it made my heart race. I crept towards the door, my hands shaking, and opened it a crack. There, standing in the hallway, was the girl from Tinder. But she didn't look anything like her photos. Her hair was matted and greasy, her eyes sunken and wild. She had a knife in one hand and a maniacal look in her eyes. Without a word, she lunged towards me, and I knew that I was in for the fight of my life. As we struggled, I couldn't help but think about all the warning signs that I had ignored, all the red flags that I had brushed off as paranoia. In the end, I managed to overpower her and call the police. They took her away in handcuffs, but the damage had already been done. I knew that I would never be able to shake the horror of what had happened, the realization that even the most innocent-seeming things could hide a dark and dangerous truth. In the days that followed, I struggled to get back to some semblance of normalcy. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the girl's crazed expression, her knife glinting in the light. I couldn't help but wonder how many other people had fallen victim to her twisted game. I found myself withdrawing from the world around me, afraid that every stranger was just another potential danger waiting to strike. Even the simplest interactions felt fraught with danger, and I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever be able to trust anyone again. But as time passed, I slowly began to rebuild my sense of security. I installed better locks on my doors and windows, and I made sure to always be aware of my surroundings. And eventually, I decided to give dating another try. This time, though, I was much more cautious. I took the time to really get to know people before agreeing to meet up, and I always made sure to meet in public places. It was a slow and sometimes frustrating process, but I knew that I couldn't let the horror of Tinder keep me from finding love. In the end, I did find someone who I connected with, someone who made me feel safe and secure. And while I still think back to that terrifying experience with a shiver, I also know that I've become stronger because of it. I've learned to trust my instincts and to never let my guard down, even when things seem too good to be true. The horror of Tinder will always be a part of my past, but I refuse to let it define my future. I know that there are good people out there, and I'm determined to find them, no matter what. As I navigated my way through the murky waters of online dating, I found myself becoming more and more cautious. I made sure to always trust my instincts, even when they told me to walk away from someone who seemed perfect on paper. But even with all my precautions, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Sometimes, when I was out on a date, I would catch a glimpse of someone who looked familiar, someone who reminded me of the girl from Tinder. It was probably just my imagination, but it made me feel uneasy all the same. And then, one day, I received a message from an unknown number. It was short and to the point, "I'm sorry." At first, I didn't know what to make of it. Was this some kind of sick joke, or was the girl from Tinder trying to apologize for what she had done? I tried to call the number back, but it was disconnected. For a while, I couldn't stop thinking about the message. It seemed so out of place, so unexpected. And then, one day, I received a package in the mail. It was small and unremarkable, just a plain brown box with no return address. I opened it up and found a note inside, written in the same spidery handwriting as the message. It was short and to the point, "I'm sorry for what I did. I was in a bad place and I didn't know how to get out. Please forgive me." As I read the note, I felt a strange mix of anger and compassion. Part of me wanted to lash out at the girl, to tell her that she had no right to invade my life like that. But another part of me recognized the desperation in her words, the sense of a lost soul searching for redemption. In the end, I decided to forgive her. Not because she deserved it, but because I knew that holding on to anger would only poison my own soul. I wrote her back, telling her that I forgave her and hoped that she could find a way to move forward with her life. And then, I put the horror of Tinder behind me once and for all. I knew that I would always be cautious when it came to online dating, but I also knew that I couldn't let one bad experience define my entire life. I had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of trusting my instincts and being aware of the dangers that lurked around every corner. But I had also learned that forgiveness was a powerful force, one that could heal even the deepest wounds. And as I moved forward into a brighter future, I knew that I would always be grateful for that lesson, no matter how hard it had been to learn.